Welcome to 360. You're watching RTV News. Isabel is my name. I guess that was about to be RTV News. If you've been watching that, then you know that this is a regular face. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Now, today we have a very special edition for you that is going to be focusing on post-Kenya elections. On 9th August, we saw President-elect William Ruto declared as the winner. Now, when those results came out, they were quite challenged by a few stakeholders, including Raila Odinga's camp and some of the commissioners that came out to say that they were not comfortable with what was about to be announced a little later on, and that was in a press conference that was held just minutes before Mr. Chebukati was about to step up and announce. But there's so many T's to cross. There's so much to understand when it comes to the legalities. Should Raila Odinga's camp decide to challenge the vote? Do they have enough to warrant them petitioning the court, or do they not? Now, those are questions I cannot answer, but I do have a very able panel today joining me for the conversation. With me is Mr. Japhas Arafat Bigambo, who is a Kenyan lawyer and a governance specialist. He is also a political analyst and a communications specialist. He'll be joining us via Skype. But with me in studio today, we do have a friend of RTV, a political analyst, and somebody that really understands things to do with political economy, if I may put it that way, Mr. Frederick Golova Mutebi. It's good to have you back.
Thank you for inviting me again.
Thank you for braving the cold to help us understand a little bit better.
Well, it's not that cold, so it wasn't painful at all.
Glad to hear that.
To be here.
Glad to hear that. And also with me is a gentleman that is at the helm of the Association of Kenyans in Rwanda, Mr. Onesmus Marete, who is also a lecturer at Mount Kenya University. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me, Isabel. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Later on, we'll cross over to speak to Mr. Japhas as our technical team gets him online. Let us start with a little scene setting, and I want to start with, if you will indulge me, kind of the trajectory of events, the morning of the announcement. First off, we saw a very jubilant situation. There seemed to be nothing out of the ordinary. We saw a lot of reports coming out, and some of the observers were actually calling it a lot of things. Some were saying that it is a kind of democracy that is admirable and something that they hope that, other African countries would emulate. And some of them were even going as far as calling it an institutional kind of credibility that they were happy to witness and the Africa that they want to see. Now, when you look at what has been happening in the past when it comes to Kenyan elections, there's been a lot of animosity, especially credited to the ethnicity or the ethnic politics. But that did not happen now. What do you think we can credit that kind of, next level kind of politics that we witnessed this time around?
Thank you very much, Isabel. First of all, I think that what we have seen in Kenya is exemplary in many ways. There are not many election campaigns that pass off as peacefully as they have done in Kenya in the recent few days. The elections themselves were peaceful. I didn't see scenes of violence or chaos. But of course, the protracted period that elapses between when the elections end and when the results are declared, that I think that me and a few others thought that that's a little bit excessive. It does cause too much anxiety, in my opinion. Even those of us who were watching from a distance, who didn't really have too much of a stake in that election, we felt, if we are feeling this way, what are Kenyans feeling? So apparently that's what is specified by the law in Kenya, but I think that it would be quite nice if it was looked at again. The tension and the anxiety it causes, in my opinion, is a bit excessive. Now, on the issue of ethnic voting or ethnic politics, I think that what we had this time round is that Ruto, who comes from a fairly large ethnic community, and Kenyatta, who comes from another large ethnic community, happened to split the support in such a way that it would have been very difficult to cause these tensions, because from what I understand, Ruto got a very large vote in Kenyatta's own backyard.
Yes.
So why Kenyatta's community chose to vote that way, I still haven't really understood it, but I think that it was an interesting phenomenon.
If I could interrupt you there, I know that some of the observers and critics have credited that to the fact that President Uhuru actually chose to support Raila, and that could have probably provided a door that was not anticipated.
That's possible. I think that we can reach all kinds of conclusions in the immediate aftermath of the election, but what actually happened, we need to hold on a little bit and maybe wait for some research that might be done into this. Yeah, but clearly it seems as if Kenyatta wasn't able to persuade his community to vote the way that he recommended. And I think that that would have taken the heat quite considerably out of the electoral contest. But of course, we have seen since the declaration of the results that in Luo Nyanza, tempers have been flaring quite a bit, and there have been accusations of rigging and so on and so forth. Just before I came here, I saw a clip of scenes of violence, and I thought, in the run-up to the appeal that the Oginga team might lodge in the Supreme Court, are we going to begin to see things of this kind happening? So I don't know. But clearly, what happened in Kenya, I think that those of us from countries where campaigns and elections are matters of life and death, we could learn a few lessons. To say that we should emulate what happened in Kenya, I think that's a bit difficult. These things are, you just don't wake up one day and emulate what has happened in Kenya. There's a history behind it, and there are processes behind it that you can't just easily replicate in another country.
Okay.
Perhaps, Isabel, to weigh in on that issue when you talked about maybe the lack of the tribal animosity this time around. If you look at the results which were announced by Chebukati a few days ago, Raila and over 25% in that 4 counties out of 47, Ruto won that 9 counties which voted for him over 25%. So it shows both of them and broad support across the country. So maybe as time has gone from 2007 going to 2013, 2017, no, the politics have moved from now tribal to even issue-based. Because like this time there are issues about economy. Someone coming with a bottom-up approach, another one is another approach. So apart from the tribal backing, also there was now other issues that people looked at when they were voting. And you see that now both of them had a lot of support across the region. So now the issue of tribal now becomes diluted, because you find in the same family, you have people who are supporting Raila, supporting Ruto, the same family. So now the issue of, I think, politics is now becoming, is taking a backseat, which is a good thing.
It is indeed a good thing. Do we have Javas online? Yes. Awesome. Javas, I just want to bring you in here, and we just heard from my 2 panelists what their thoughts are. And it's really nice to see that there's not been so much animosity. And again, like President-elect said, you as Kenyans took the politics of the land to the next level. But what are your thoughts on this particular matter?
Well, thank you so much, Isabel. And I've been listening in, and these are very interesting discussions that you're having. And, you know, Rwanda is in Kenya's regional neighborhood. And whatever is happening in Kenya, of course, is of great interest to Rwanda, Uganda, and the entire region. Now, of course, this has been a very interesting election in Kenya. and it's been largely peaceful. In fact, quite open. I would declare it a fair election, transparent to a great extent, and it has adhered to the principles of a free, fair, and accountable election as it's provided for in the Constitution. If I look at it through the lenses of comparison, the way the election in 2017 was held and the election in 2013 was held. You may recall that in 2017, the Supreme Court of Kenya nullified the presidential election results because of irregularities and illegalities.
Right.
When you look at the Constitution of Kenya, it provides that the transmission of presidential election results must be by way of electronic. And in 2017, that did not happen in very many constituencies. Hence, the declaration of illegalities and irregularities. This time round, all results have been transmitted electronically from all the 291 constituencies. The 91st constituency is diaspora. And we have also seen that upon the transmission, all the results from the form that was filled at the primary polling station or all the primary polling stations were uploaded on the website of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. This took away the pressure that automatically, naturally is always on the IEBC. And it also demonstrated a great sense of openness and transparency on the part of the commission. We also saw that all the commissioners, including the chair, were working together in a spirit of cooperation and collegiality. But of course, upon declaration of results, or just before the declaration of results on that particular day, we saw that a number of commissioners pulled away and said that they would not take ownership of the results. Of course, there are a number of dynamics that come into play, some political, etc., that possibly inform the kind of challenges that the commission is facing presently, given the fact that, in fact, all the 4 commissioners who have drifted were appointed at the same time about mid last year by President Kenyatta. Now, we as Kenyans have largely been happy about how this election was conducted. Nobody has questioned the qualitative aspect of this election. We have seen that presidential candidate His Excellency Honorable Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister, has disputed the election results as was declared by the Election Commission Chair, Wafula Chebukati. Now, Raila Odinga's dispute of the election has not put to trial the qualitative aspect of the election, rather the quantitative test of the election, because Raila Odinga is questioning the numerics of the election, the tabulation of the election and the ultimate declaration. Additionally, Honorable Raila Odinga is questioning the legitimacy of the chair of the commission to declare those results.
If I can interrupt, Jeffers, based on what has been said so far, is there any evidence that can back some of those allegations? Is there anything that you have heard so far that you feel can even warrant them using that to petition the court and thereafter actually get a rerun if they went after that?
Well, my heart and mind are constantly having the pulse of the political and legal issues in the country. Now, comparing the position of Honorable Raila Odinga in this election as his position was in the 2013 election and the 2017 election that he disputed, and ultimately the Supreme Court of Kenya nullified the results, I would say that in 2017, for instance, Honorable Raila Odinga, while addressing the country and the press, provided reasonable evidence that led to his disputing the election results. So he began by winning the argument in the court of public opinion before even he petitioned the Supreme Court.
So you feel that's not something he has achieved this time round?
This time round, any objective observer will tell you that even going by the statement that Honorable Raila Odinga released yesterday, there are major gaps that weaken the case if it petitions at the Supreme Court. It is curious that this time round, Raila Odinga has not pinpointed certain critical issues that he intends to depend on as evidence in the Supreme Court to try and persuade or move the court.
Could that be strategy? Perhaps, you know, those are things that they are holding back, keeping in their back pocket as ammunition for court. But I'll come back to you. I want to pick your mind on the same, Onesmus. I know that you gave an interview to the New Times, and just like we just had Jeffers say, you also highlighted the fact that it was peaceful up until that point when it wasn't so much. And what we did see was the commissioners, the 4 commissioners, and the deputy coming out and saying, no, we cannot own what is about to be declared. They called the process opaque. And listening to Javas, he's saying, back the previous election, Raila actually had something to say that helped him win, but first the public opinion, but also something that was substantial for him to go ahead and petition the court. Looking at what you have seen, first of all, the weight of the 4 commissioners, and also the fact that he's talking about a possible, some people have said even hacking. There's a lot of speculation around what he has. What do you make of all of this, and could it be strategy that he's not telling us anything?
Okay, since the day of elections, as my colleague mentioned here, of course the results were slow in verification, which was one of the issues that led to the 2017 nullification. So the ABC had to verify each and every form. So they took time, but all the results were already in the public portal. Anyone could be able to compute and calculate. Many people did that. Many people even released their own tallies. So by the time we were going for the announcement, I feel that maybe by when we are supposed to be, people are supposed to be on the seated at around 3 p.m. And it took, of course, more than the 3 p.m. But by that time, I think many people already probably knew where the results were ending to because of what was published. Then there were some delays here and there, almost 2 hours. And then, of course, we saw some commotion. And then later, some 4 commissioners took off and gave some pressure. And then Chebukati released the results. So, okay, now what happened, maybe the implications is there are two views. I'm not a legal scholar, but I know, of course, there was a Maina Kiai case which said that the commissioner, the Chebukati cannot act alone. He has to consult other commissioners, maybe for some issues. But also the constitution says that Chebukati, as the chairman, is the sole presidential returning officer to announce the results. Does not say that he needs to consult. So I think these are the issues now the 2 legal teams are weighing to see if there is enough evidence to go and present at the Supreme Court. So I think maybe before the week elapses, you're going to see there's going to be a petition once they do
lawyers, have 7 days, right?
Yes, yeah. Okay. They're up to Tuesday. Then they weigh the evidence and maybe analyze it, and they get also advice. And then if they feel they still need to proceed, then we have the 2 weeks after that they present for the case to be ruled. But I think now it's about weighing their evidence they have.
I want to come back to you shortly and really just get a better understanding of how the community, the Kenyan community in Rwanda is reacting to all of this. But before we move on to that, Mr. Golova, listening to what Onesmus and Jaffas just said, and the way everything has sort of transpired, what do you make of all of it? And like I said earlier, could it be strategy that, because Mr. Raila has actually had a couple of moments in front of the press with the cameras. He's had ample space to be able to tell us what it is that he deems as irregular or illegal that has transpired during this process, but we've not had anything. What we had earlier today was some of the reports coming out saying that they do expect a delayed victory, and they are very sure that when they go before court, that is something that will happen. Your thoughts?
Well, there must be a reason why they're feeling as confident as they seem to feel. I'm not sure that anyone outside of their immediate circle knows the full extent of the evidence that they may have in their possession. they have said a few things that make you pause and think that, well, if that happened, maybe there are some grounds for questioning what has been declared. Now, going back to the Electoral Commission, of course, as my colleague pointed out, the law prescribes a certain level of consultation between the chairman and the rest of the commission. But it's the chairman who declares the results. But if my memory serves me right, the case that the 4 commissioners have put forward is that the chairman declared results which he had not explained to them in as far as where they were coming from is concerned. So they say the process was opaque. So it sounded to me as if the consultation that is prescribed by the law did not happen, going by the words of the 4 commissioners. Now, if that didn't happen, would it still be legal for the chairman of the commission to go ahead and announce results about which there is already disagreement within the commission itself? Now, that I think should be tested by the law if this goes to the courts. I have heard some claims that the Oginga team did not have polling agents at some of the polling stations, which surprises me given that they were the government side, pretty much the government side. So it seems to me that what we have is a very curious case of the opposition leader being accused of having rigged the elections. Because actually in most cases it's governments that rig elections.
They would have the state resources.
Yeah, it's sitting governments that rig elections. In Kenya we have a curious case of saying, well, the opposition candidate rigged elections and won them. So again, it will be interesting to see where this goes. But at least I think that there are many things for which we should commend Kenyans and the electoral process there. In some countries, the losing side would never have had a chance to look at the declaration forms. They would have been hidden away. They would probably have not had a chance even to have a press conference to declare the results rigged. So to see that this is all happening in a peaceful atmosphere, the losing side is able to convene a press conference and it's not disrupted. They're able to put their case forward. The commissioners are able to dissent publicly. This, again, in some countries, it would be beyond imagination. So I think that whatever happens in the end is only going to serve to advance the cause of democracy in Kenya. And again, people who come from countries where electoral processes are not of that quality, I think that we have a great deal to be envious about. But as to whether we can emulate this, I'm still not quite sure. No.
Let's go to Javas. Javas, are you still with us?
And the debate is quite exciting.
Yes.
Now, there are certain fundamental issues that have been raised by my co-panelists.
Yes.
And one of them is regarding the declaration of results by the chair, in the absence of the 4 other commissioners. Now, the issue of consensus in decision-making is an issue that emanates from the constituting legislation of the IEBC, which is the IEBC Act, which provides that the commission, in arriving at any decision, such a decision must be by way of consensus or majority of the commission. Now, when you look at the Constitution of Kenya, it also provides then separately that the chair of the commission has got the sole power and responsibility of declaring the results of a presidential election. The critical question then that arises is this: when declaring presidential results, is it a decision of the commission, or the commission is merely making a declaration of the results? Now, logically speaking, in a democracy, during the voting process, it is the voters that are making a decision by way of choosing the leaders they desire to be led by. So by voting, the voter has made a decision. The commission only needs to tally the votes, which means that it is the work of the commission to tally and come up and aggregate the decision of the voters. So the commission has got the responsibility of announcing the decision of the voters. When it comes to announcing the results of a presidential election, the commission is not making a decision.
Okay.
It is merely announcing the decision of the voters.
Let's explore that, Javas, a little bit. When you say they're not making a decision, they're merely announcing. Earlier, you talked about majority, but you also talked about the fact that the chairman does not necessarily have to consult. So did I get you right? Or when it goes to court, can't there be room for technicality, for something to pass in terms of I see room there to be explored by the opposition team on technicality?
Now, first, the Constitution of Kenya provides that justice shall be served without due regard to procedural technicalities. So, by way of the Kenyan Constitution, procedural technicalities cannot be the clutch upon which somebody can hold on. Because the Constitution provides that justice must be served for all and to all without due regard to procedural technicalities. Now, earlier I talked about the issue of consensus in decision making. Consensus in decision making, as provided for, it is in the Act of Parliament that is establishing the IEBC. Now, remember that beyond the issue of declaration of results in a presidential election, there are many other issues that the IEBC handles. Internal decisions about procurement issues, about labor issues, etc. Those are decisions of the commission upon which, before arriving, there must be consensus or majority of the commission. But when it comes to...
I'm going to come back to you on that. I know that I can see your body language saying a lot of things, Mr. Golova. Can we put words to what it is that you'd like to say?
I'm intrigued by some of the things that Javas is saying there, and I would like him to help me understand this. If you have a commission of 7 people,
yes,
and the law prescribes decision-making by consultation.
Yes, yes.
It seems to me as if what the law is actually saying is that once the results are in, those results should be looked at by the 7 commissioners, discussed, so that to the satisfaction of all the 7, so that they agree that this is the result. In which case, then it's only the chairman who makes the announcement of what the result is. But it seems to me as if what we have in Kenya is a failed agreement within the commission itself as to what the results mean. Because 4 commissioners are saying we can't own these results because we asked as to how these results were arrived at, through what kind of tallying. We needed to be able to be clear how these results had been arrived at, so that we then agree that the chairman can go ahead and announce them. I think that there is a bit of uncertainty there. Does the chairman of the IEBC simply announce what he or she has decided is the result, or does the chairman announce what has been arrived at by consensus as the result?
I think
I just want to add 1 or 2 things. Though I'm not a legal scholar, but if you look at the context of elections, we have a constituency returning officer, we have a county returning officer, and a presidential returning officer, and there is no committee. It's their sole responsibility for a single individual. So probably the commissioners would assist the chairman, collect results, but it is prescribed as one single individual, and he signs. And in case of any dispute, is responsible, is answerable. So there are levels of returning officers, and the chairman is the presidential returning officer as a single person. That's what my understanding is.
Thanks for that level of clarity. When you put it that way, you actually answer quite a few questions. But Javas, I want to put the same to you. Mr. Goloba raises a lot of questions that I myself still grapple with and can't seem to have answers. Can we have Javas back? Javas, no. Can you hear us?
No, thank you. I can hear you. Mr. Goloba, I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Goloba, not Galoba. Goloba.
Goloba. Mr. Goloba is reflecting well on the issues. And let me put it this way, that it is not in the place of the commission to decide who is the winner of the presidential contest. We have got 290 constituencies. Now, at the constituency level, we have got the returning officer, and we have got the agents of all presidential candidates. All right? At the constituency, once the votes of the presidential candidate at a polling station have been, now there is the constituency, then there is the polling stations. Now, at the polling station, once the votes have been tallied there, and the agents of the presidential candidates have witnessed upon counting, that result will be entered in a form called Form 34A, and all the agents will sign against it. Mm-hmm. Then the image of that Form 34A will be taken and uploaded on the IEBC website right away. Then those results will be taken, all of them from the polling stations, to the constituency tallying center. Then the results from the polling stations across the constituency will be put together and put in a form called Form 34B. That Form 34B is what will be taken to the National Tallying Center. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission at the National Tallying Center will look at Form 34A and look at the results provided in Form 34B and see whether they tally, whether they are congruent, because there must be no variance. Now, going by the Supreme Court decision in 2017, as well as the Maina Kiai decision that my co-panelist cited earlier, provides that the results as declared at the polling station and filled in Form 34A are the original primary results that cannot be varied. Even the commission cannot put a dot on those results. If there is a variance or an anomaly in Form 34A, the commission can only enter that variance in the memorandum that they have, record it in the memorandum, so that in case there is a presidential petition, the commission will avail this to the court. Then it's only the court that can determine whether that variance warrants being corrected in Form 34A.
But what happens during that time becomes the question, because to my understanding, the 4 commissioners actually spoke to the chairman and said, look, we're looking at, these results, the last leg of what is coming in. And, prior everything seemed okay, but there's something questionable right here. Could we look at the whole, tallying situation? And he overruled that and went ahead. And so what happens when a problem is cited? It's just written down and the chairman is free to announce the results regardless of a serious case being put forward?
Your reflections are very right. What happens? And they seem to be working well and cooperating well throughout the process, except that last phase, yes, as the 4 commissioners said. Very right. Now, the thing is this. Even as the 4 commissioners indicated, which they are very right, that the commissioners were not doing the actual tallying of the results, looking at or downloading the forms that were on the website, on the portal, Forms 34A that had been uploaded. It is the technical team that downloads, tallies, and gives the commissioners, who then verify and come to announce. All right? It is the technical team. Now, here, the question that arises is this. At what point exactly did the 4 commissioners and the other 3, including the chair, start having a dispute? What was the exact point of disagreement?
And did they follow procedure when putting that across?
Exactly. Yeah. Secondly, the issue is this. which is, I would want to know once the matter is petitioned and prosecuted in the Supreme Court. Did they have a commission meeting, which must be minuted? And then did they record their dissent? Is that dissent on record? Very important. But beyond that, I think the chair of the commission, who is the head of the commission, must also come clean and clear about what exactly transpired.
Yes.
And what is the point of dispute.
I think that's where there's an issue, Jeffers, because there's not been so much in terms of telling the general public what's going on. But I want to shift our conversation a little bit in the interest of time. My goodness, our time is already so fast spent. Java, sticking with you for a moment there, you put out a couple of tweets talking about what your sentiments were regarding the 4 commissioners. And one of the things you said was the fact that you felt like they looked like they were coached. They were not presenting the case very well. If we could pull up those tweets that he shared earlier. I want you to indulge us, if you care to elaborate on some of these.
Thank you so much. Now, you see, when they were addressing the press conference the second time, they read very clearly their statement, and even the issue of the tally coming to 100.01, right? Now, the issue is this. When they were fielding questions from the journalists, from the media, they could not respond to the critical questions that the media was raising. Now, legally
could that
speaking,
be perhaps because legally they may not be able to comment on certain matters?
No, in fact, they were not legal technicalities that they were being asked about. The question was about that 0.0, which actually they add even in the arithmetics, all right? And legally, the maxim goes that whoever alleges a fact must prove it. Now, when the question was put to them, they said, we don't know about that. It is Mr. Chebukati who can respond to that. But you see, the burden is on them as of now because they are alleging a fact. The onus is on them to prove it. Now, why I said that they were coached is because they seemed to be unclear, or there was no agreement about the specificity of the number of votes they think is varying. That's 0.01. They could not. Secondly, when the question was posed about the issue of whether they have got alternative results that they think are correct results, varying from what Mr. Chebukati announced, they said they do not have. So, question arises. If at all they do not have the results that they consider as accurate, why are they disputing the results that the chair announced, if at all there is no other result that they consider should be right?
All right, let's what was that, Mr. Golova?
From what I heard, Javas, correct me if I'm wrong, and my colleague, you could also correct me. I do not remember that the 4 commissioners were disputing the results. They said they cannot own them. They are not sure that these results reflect the outcome of the election. I think that there is a subtle difference there. They're not saying, look, these are not the correct results. They're saying, we cannot vouch for them.
We don't understand how things
they wanted to be convinced that these were the actual results, but that process didn't happen. But I've also had some allegations. Over time, I've had allegations of hacking into computers.
Yes.
I've had allegations of Azimio not having polling agents in some places and therefore some of the forms not being signed by their side. I don't know which of these claims are valid, but I've had these claims being thrown around. And again, it made me think that, well, maybe there seem to be elements of a case that could turn out to be a fairly strong one, not that it would necessarily lead to a rerun or even an annulment of the presidential election. But the positive side of this is that it will go to court. This evidence is going to be put to the test.
They probably have enough to go to court.
And we are going to see yet again a process of dispute settlement that doesn't involve the interference of the police and security agencies and so on and so forth. And personally, I think that that again would be a plus for Kenya. Yes. If that happens.
Yes.
You talked about maybe the chair not coming out to explain, but I think just today he released a statement to the media about what transpired and tried to explain a few things. Maybe it was a big statement, but he said the commissioners wanted for him to moderate the results. So there's a runoff. That was a statement from Chebukati today. So it sees that there were a lot of back and forths. So I think maybe when it is prosecuted in the court of law, we're going to get all the details, but there's no back accusations from this side and this side. So we really don't know exactly what happened.
There was a sense of that statement being quite blanket, and there was not really solid details of what happened behind closed doors. Gentlemen, in the interest of time, I want us to move to something else that's caught everybody's attention, and I want to start with you, Mr. Goloba. The moving speech the world witnessed from President-elect William Ruto. He hailed the people of Kenya. He called them heroes. He also called Chebukati a hero, and was really grateful for the peaceful elections and transition. He also talked about the fact that Kenyans rose beyond the ethnic politics. He said quite a lot. He called his opponent, Raila Odinga, a worthy opponent. And there was a lot that happened during his few minutes of address. But what stood out for you? What did you make of his speech? And by the way, he also did thank President Uhuru Kenyatta, despite of the situation between the two.
Well, the speech didn't strike me as surprising, having come at the end of what, as I said before, was a largely civilized electoral process, which was devoid of violence or angry disputes. You know, campaigns in Africa can be very angry. They can entail violence, both physical and verbal. Mm-hmm. We didn't see that. I think that to his credit, it was a very magnanimous speech, what one would expect from somebody who wants to be seen as a statesman. So no, it didn't strike me as surprising at all, given the process as it had unfolded. I was a bit struck by his thanking of the chairman of the Electoral Commission, given the dispute that had already emerged. I thought that was a bit odd.
Yes.
But yeah, the rest of it didn't surprise me. It struck me as very positive, which is a good thing. And it lived to what we had already witnessed as a very peaceful, orderly, civilized electoral process.
Right. And Onesmus, did anything stand out for you during his address?
Okay, I think after such a bruising contest, now that he has declared president-elect, he knows he's going to lead everyone. So it's only natural now to calm down the temperatures and be collegiate to his colleagues, the opposition, and also the president-elect. So I think he did the right thing, because now the contest is over. Now there is no bare knuckle. It's now to try now and calm temperatures and now unite people and move together.
Again, speaking of moving together and calming the people, it seems as though this is just a politician's battle. And the people of Kenya, the sing-along has been, we're ready to move forward, we're ready to move on, can we move on? Would you agree with that conclusion?
Of course, it is still unfinished business, because there is a dispute which has been raised. Although it has not been raised legally, we are waiting until next week to know if it is raised. If it's raised, then the process continues for another 2 weeks. But for now, of course, you have a president-elect. So it's moving forward, because schools tomorrow open, businesses have opened, people are starting to move on, because it's the end of a process. But of course, the Constitution provides other means of now resolving those disputes. So basically, you have reached the climax, and now it is moving on, and I think everyone has started moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Javas, what are your thoughts on President-elect's speech? And in particular, the part that stood out for everybody seemed to be the fact that he did acknowledge President Uhuru Kenyatta in what he said. I think we even have a smaller extract of what his speech was. Maybe we can have that on screen. But also the question I asked earlier, the differences seem to be among us politicians. It seems to be a politician's war. And the people of Kenya seem quite ready to move forward. Now, when you talk about going to court and the court of public opinion and all of the dynamics of all of that, what do you make of that conclusion, and how might that impact Raila's camp should he decide to go to court?
Oh, well, first, I think the president-elect was trying to be magnanimous in his victory. And that's why I think he wanted to appear humble and reaching out, including to his boss, President Kenyatta. But remember that Deputy President, now President-elect William Ruto, is a snake oil merchant. He is very good in terms of his political communication.
Right.
So he knows how to play around with words and how to strike.
Yep.
So you can give it to him. Quite loquacious and quite an orator. And so I think he was utilizing the best of his gifting to try and reach out. And now that perhaps he also realizes that the country is divided right down the middle, he wanted possibly to appeal to those who even maybe never voted for him, and even leaders on the other side. Now, if we're to look at the panoramic view of his approach to politics, especially after that declaration, we have seen that even the independent candidates, the candidates who ran on independent tickets to parliament, about 12 of them who won, already he has reached out to 10 of them, wooed them, and now they're on the side of his coalition. He is moving pretty fast than his opponents. So you can see that I think he's a schemer, and he's a few steps ahead of his opponents. And that's why I think where he kind of outmaneuvers his opponents. He's quite a political jackal, lion, and fox, when you look at it through the lenses of The Prince by Machiavelli. And so I think that's how I look at it. But beyond that, I think he also appreciates that if he takes, and when he takes the reins of power upon swearing in, once the matters are concluded, for example, if at all there's no nullification, that it will be very difficult for him to navigate the political space and leadership if at all he does not reach out. We nearly had a hung parliament because in the Senate, his coalition has got an extra 1 seat. And in the National Assembly, the opposition now, the Azimio coalition led by Honorable Raila Odinga, is ahead of him by a few seats. And so that is why he has moved with meteoric speed to get the independent candidates on his side. So that when you add these 10 on his side, then he surpasses the Raila Odinga side by about 10 members of the National Assembly. Now, beyond that, I think he was also trying to demonstrate to the country that even if the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, did not support him, he is still calling him his boss and trying to praise him. And that's why he said he's a snake oil merchant.
Okay, in the interest of time, Javas, we quickly have to get into our parting shots, unfortunately. But gentlemen, this has been incredible. It's been a joy. I wish we had more time. But I want to come to you, Mr. Golova. Listening to what Javas has said quite eloquently, they're describing what he believes is the character, the nature of President-elect, and he calls him a wordsmith. Looking at what he has said makes me want to better understand your thoughts in terms of what he will bring to the table. That question of his contribution to the EAC bloc, a lot has been said about what he could contribute. He's made a lot of promises, but let's focus on what you think he could contribute.
I think if I ventured and made statements about what he's going to contribute on that score, it would be very speculative on my part. I don't know what he's going to contribute. I think that remains to be seen. But what I would like to point out is that President-elect Ruto has a history. And I think that we should not lull ourselves into forgetting that this is a man with a history. He's not new in politics. He may be reasonably young, but his political career goes back to the era of Arap Moi. And he does have a history there.
That can be a double-edged sword.
Well,
I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, hang on. Listening to Java's mention how he has now already co-opted 10 members of the 10 independent members of parliament, the question in my mind is, what did he give them in exchange, or what did he promise them in exchange? And it marks a bit of transactional politics, the kind of politics that we witness in many parts of Africa. I mean, people have run on an independent ticket. Before even parliament is constituted, they're already crossing. Why are they crossing? What has he given them? What has he promised them? What kind of politics are we going to witness in Kenya? I am going to remain open-minded, but also not forget that the gentleman has a history, and that history might follow him into the presidency. And if it does, Kenya will be in for some very interesting times. I don't know what he's going to contribute towards strengthening or developing the East African community. President Kenyatta hasn't done very badly. Neither has he done anything spectacular that one could point at. The East African community is an animal in its own. It's as good as the states, or as the governments that constitute it, but one government in Kenya is not going to make such a big difference. Unless somebody wants to tell me that he's going to rally the other presidents of the member countries.
Saying the fact that he's been able to do a lot of convincing, and he's a wordsmith. There's a lot of positive.
Words are important in politics, but I think there is a lot more that's important. It remains to be seen what he's going to do.
All true. Well, I'd like to get your comment on the same in terms of, his win. What does that mean for the ESC community? And also, I mean, because time is really out, one of the questions that I believe is on everybody's mind is how has the Kenyan community in Rwanda reacted to all that is happening back home?
First, I think I'm kind of excited by the excitement around the East African region about the politics of Kenya. People seem to be very informed. And that's a good plus for the EAC. It means you are integrating, you're getting interested in other people's politics and interests, which is a good thing. Of course, the politicians only, they facilitate, but the people themselves that are able to integrate if they're facilitated, like this issue of crossing borders and so forth. So seeing Ruto's win, he has been in government, he has been the deputy president, he has been around for quite a long time. So I don't see a lot of radical departure from what has been going on. Just a continuation in the East Africa building. It has been, I think, growing positively, although it's at a slow pace. So I think I see the same thing. I don't see any radical departures because I think he knows most of these presidents. They have met, they have interacted policy-wise. So I don't see a lot of departure. About the community of Kenyans here, we are quite a number. And of course, we are very involved in campaigns, just like in Kenya, and some even very heated. And we voted here for the president.
How was the voting? Did many Kenyans come out to actually vote?
The turnout was not very good. We are just around 500 who voted for the president. And Raila Odinga took it from the diaspora here in Rwanda, a small margin. But people are involved and people are interested in what is happening. Kenyans, I think politics is in our DNA. We like politics and we follow and we are interested and we invest in it. But I'm also now seeing the other members of the region getting interested. And I think that's a good thing, and I'm excited with this, the way things are going. Yeah.
In many ways, Kenya has always been a trendsetter, and one country to watch. There's always quite a number of controversial issues coming out of Kenya, but the politics this time around, there's definitely been a lot of things that were causing a lot of excitement, but also things to debate. Javas, you get to take it home. Even as we wind up, I just want to pick your mind. Do we still have Javas on the call? Yeah, awesome. Javas, looking at what we've witnessed this year, Kenya's Choice 2022, what next for Kenya? And what do you think is going to be the impact of the trajectory of events throughout this entire process on the future?
Violence in 2007, 8, it seems that they do not want to relapse into that kind of functional mayhem that follows an election. And that's why subsequent elections have been largely peaceful, and we have continued to develop our jurisprudence and our electoral practice. Now, moving forward, it is up to Kenyans to decide how they intend to rise from these ashes of this election with this dispute as to whether the strings of brotherhood will continue to hold, which they must, and whether politicians are willing to have the arms of common sense and great leadership and national cohesion spirit appealing to them to lead this country forward. It is also dependent on the kind of vision, leadership, and capacity that the President-elect William Ruto will need to inject into the body politic. To what extent he is willing to depart from retrogressive politics that is partisan or that separates people. We do not need a separatist kind of government. We need an all-inclusive government. But now, as Honorable Raila Odinga heads to the courts, Kenyans are watching and the world is watching. But we know and we celebrate the fact that Honorable Raila Odinga indicated yesterday that Kenyans and his supporters, to that extent, should not take the law in their hands. And this is very moving, that a departure from what he said in 2017 and 2013, he did not call for mass action or an action that is of a socioeconomic nature for people to abscond or to stop procuring certain kind of products that are associated with certain kind of people that are not supporting his bid. And so moving forward, I think Kenya is poised to set foot into very exciting times with new leadership here, a younger person, a new generation that does not have the pedigree of the traditional political class and families. So everybody is wondering, of course, like Mr. Golora has indicated, I hope I get his name right, that Mr. Ruto or President-elect Ruto has got his own political history, and we are watching to see whether he will live up to the promises he's made, because in Kenya, no government has implemented even 45% of their manifesto. Will President-elect Dr. William Ruto implement the manifesto that is committed? Whatever he promised to deliver in the first 100 days, will he deliver? Wow. These questions cannot be responded to by me sitting here tonight. They will be responded to in action by what he will deliver or not deliver. I thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Javas. That's a great way to wrap it up for us. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for making that time. Mr. Goloba, thank you for coming through. Mr. Nesmas, it's been a joy. And of course, Javas, who's joining us virtually from Kenya. Thank you so much for the pleasure of your company. What next? Well, we get to keep watching, and we recommend that you stick to RTV. Our team here will be keeping you appraised of all the details and the events as they do unfold. Thanks for watching. Good night.